What's up, everybody? Welcome to another jam-packed college football edition of the Two Buck Sports Podcast. But Drew, I would be remiss if we didn't celebrate the gravity of what this episode is. We have been recording this podcast. We've talked about it a couple times on here. I'm Rusty, your co-host, by the way, for those of you just tuning in for the first time. We started recording this podcast almost a year ago. And we had a couple extra episodes here and there, but this is my favorite athlete of all time. One of your higher favorite athletes of all time, I'm sure. My favorite Grizzly of all time. One of your favorite Grizzlies of all time. This is the Zach Randolph episode. This is episode number 50. 50 for the city. What's up, Drew?
Man, what's going on? We've made it to a milestone. We keep doing this, and every time I get the link for the Skype every week, I look at the episode. I'm like, all right, whose episode is it this week? And we jokingly said last week was our Patrick Willis episode. It was 49. That's the number he wore at Ole Miss. One of my favorite Rebels of all time, obviously. But this week to have 50, to have Zach Randolph, the only number that's in the rafters at FedEx Forum, to represent this little old podcast from two Mississippi boys. It's just an honor. It's just an honor. It's funny, and it goes into my Bucks best of the week. So I'll just go into it. I don't want this to come off as braggadocious because we're still a small-time podcast, but there is nothing better than having people say that they've listened to us. And for us to it kind of goes hand in hand. Our cousin Kurt, and he always participates with us when we love listening to Kirk's antics on this podcast. But in a moment of real, you don't get many moments of seriousness with Kirk. He just looked at me at my grandma's birthday party over the weekend, and he just said, dude, I look forward to Thursday morning every single week. And it just made me feel really good. And so this one's for Kirk. It's also fun. I told you a couple weeks ago, word started getting around the office that I had a podcast, or that we have a podcast, and everybody thinks it's cute. Like everybody's had a podcast for one reason, but I'm like, no, we've done 50 episodes. It is still a hobby. It is definitely not a career anywhere close to that. But I'm proud that we've stuck it through. We've almost made it a whole year. We are in our second college football season. Granted, we didn't start in the beginning of last football season, but
So it's like season 1.2 or something.
Yeah, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
It's like the best birthday ever is to be born the first part of December, because you basically get 2 Christmases in your first year of living. It's kind of how we're at with college football on this podcast. Yeah. And so it makes me feel real good to hear people say that they like it. That's not why we do it, but it is encouraging. And so if you guys ever enjoy us, we'd love to hear it, because, we're going to keep going one way or the other, but it puts an extra little pep in our steps to know that, that people out there are listening and consuming every week with us and spending an hour and a half with us.
Yeah, for sure. I've gotten messages on Instagram. I've seen people that kind of say the same thing, pull me aside, I really like your show, really enjoy y'all's banter. Drew's funny looking, but he's not bad.
That sounds personal.
No, it has been fun when people do, interact with us. So we love, we had one of the best interactions this week on our Instagram pics. It was really fun. People think we're crazy, I'm sure. And again, like Drew said, we're not doing this for the fame and certainly not for the fortune, but It is fun when our fans interact with us. So
the only fortune we're getting out of this is if somebody sends some fortune cookies our way
that we will read live on air.
I will read a fortune cookie. I'll also take a fortune when it comes to money as well. Just for sure. Somebody be dumb enough to offer for the first time.
That's it. Be our first. Because think about it, like Drew said just a few seconds ago, we don't do it for the fame and fortune yet. You can be a part of a grassroots effort to grow the next sports media conglomerate that started right here in our offices.
There are a section of snobby music fans out there, and I always think of it music because I had a semi-career in it in the past. But nobody's worse than the guy that heard the band first, takes such pride in oh yeah, I knew them before they even had a record label. That guy stinks. But
unless it's our podcast.
If we're at episode 50, But if you get in right now, you're still considered grassroots. So come on in.
Yeah.
This is nobody's a bandwagon yet.
No. I think until we get to triple digits, everybody are day one OGs, and once we start hitting 100, then we'll have to have a Patreon level. Like, yeah, that's it. Like, you donate to be an OG, but otherwise you're one of the newbies.
Then the first people that listen from day one no longer matter. It's just the people that pay us. One
day, no doubt. But yeah, man, my Bucks best of the week happened over the weekend, and it kind of turned into my beef. So I'm gonna do both of mine. Then if you got a beef, you can jump in. But I was invited, man. My Bucks best of the week is just the atmosphere at college football. College football, we talk about it. I'm so glad it's back. I love talking about it, watching it. But the best thing is just to go to a game and tailgate and be a part of the atmosphere. And a good friend of mine, shout out Bobby and his wife Kara and their friend Dee, had an extra ticket to the Coastal Carolina Jacksonville State game this weekend. Shout out Jacksonville State Gamecocks. I told him when we got there, I was like, this is my second favorite team is Jacksonville State for the upset they pulled off on the Ole Miss Rebels a few years ago, but who's counting? Anyway,
Thanks,
so we get there.
Nut.
Yeah. So we get there. They've got a great tailgate set up. We're drinking beverages, eating food. We go to the game. It's a great atmosphere. The student section is wild. It's their first home game of the year. We get there, and I make a run downstairs to get some drinks and go to the bathroom. And as I'm coming back up, I notice it's just a large flood of people coming down. And then Bobby's at the top of the stairs. He's like, Russ, got to turn around. We're in a lightning delay.
Oh, like, no. Right.
So we go downstairs. Listen, it ended up being better than the football game because we ended up next to the medical tent. And there were 4 college girls that were not having a good time.
Oh,
they were
miserable.
Gone. Yeah. One of them was holding the bag, doubled over, and anytime they set her up, she was like a wet noodle. She would just fall in whatever direction they set her up. Best part was she looked at that EMS guy and was like, I'm having a hard time. And he goes, we know.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we've all been young.
Yep. Young and dumb.
I've off air, I can tell you some stories that I would not dare to say online. I'm a better man now than I once was. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, we've all, nothing sounds more miserable than that. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we watched that for a few minutes, and then they decided to go back to the tailgate. So we did, and they said, we've got a bottle of wine. Turns out they had 3. And so we enjoyed those at the tailgate. I came home, watched the end of the Mississippi State game, and went to bed. Woke up to my Bucks beef of the week. I am an old man. I own that. I get up every morning. I put on my robe. I go to the kitchen. I get my cup of coffee, and I sit on my recliner on my couch and kind of wake up. That's what I do.
Right. Mm-hmm. Sounds great. I'm a big robe guy.
Big robe guy.
I think that's when I turned 30. I was just like, man, I love a robe.
I asked for one for Christmas a few years ago. I got it. I wear it at some point every day.
Absolutely.
I love that. And so I'm sitting on my couch and I'm like, I never get hot in my robe. Why am I hot in my own house?
Yeah.
I go to the hallway and it was set at 69 and it was 76.
I had this a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. So I popped open my little panel. I'm like, my air filter's a little dirty. It's not awful. I'll change it. And when I popped it off, what do I see behind it? But a sheet of ice on the evaporator coils.
Oh, no.
I was like,
it got too cold.
It froze up. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to thaw it out. I'm going to call for some help because I know next to nothing about AC units. And so I call this company that will remain nameless because I don't want to badmouth people on this podcast. But the guy shows up. I tell him, hey, there's black ice on my evaporator coils. It's not cooling. So they show up. He shows up. He's like, new filter? I said, yeah, I just changed it this morning. He pops it off. He's like, oh, well, here's your problem. I was like, oh, cool. He found something.
Mm-hmm.
I go over there. What do you see? He goes, it's black ice. I'm like, yeah, that's why I called.
Yes.
He goes, well, this is an older unit, man, and I can't fix it. I can't work on it. Best I can do is a brand new unit. You may call a guy to give you a quote. I'm like, dude, you have been here for 3 minutes, and you're trying to make me like, how much is a new unit for a condo anyway? He's like, oh, like you're looking at $9,000 to $12,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, get out of here. I said, give me a minute. And he said, let me go write up some options. And I'm like, yeah, you go do that. So he's walking downstairs.
Take your time, buddy.
And I'm like, so I'm Googling how much is a condo AC.
Right.
And they're going for like $4,000 to $4,500 in South Carolina right now. Much more it's expensive.
Plus installation.
So it said 4,500 installed. I mean, it may be 5 or 6, but like either way, it's still much cheaper than 12. Like there's no reason that a 1,400 square foot condo needs a $12,000 air conditioner.
Yeah, I think some box fans will work.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, man. But anyway, he comes back up and he just told me he couldn't fix it, but he had a quote for $3,000 to fix some stuff on it. I'm like, hey, man, hold on. You just said you can't fix it. Oh, well, yeah, these are bandages. I still think you need a new one. I said, look, man, I'm good. Like, I'm just going to think about it and I'll be in touch. And he's like, all right, that'll be $100. Like, this man, like, didn't do anything. Like,
I need to be in the HVAC business.
I paid him $100 to confirm that I saw ice on my AC unit.
Yep, it's ice.
So I'm like, dude, I open my freezer every day and look at ice. I know what ice looks like.
I've been very familiar, intimately familiar with frozen water in my.
I try to be a humble guy, but I am arrogant when it comes to my ability to spot ice. I know what it looks like. Right. So anyway, he leaves and I start YouTubing. Like, there's got to be a way. So I find meanwhile, I call a friend. He kind of helps me through it too. I prop a hair dryer on it. I'm thawing out my coals. I'm looking up what to do. I find how to flush my own drain line. Did that. There was some gunk in there. It was definitely some buildup. Thawed out my evaporator coils. Then I mixed some warm water, mild detergent, and a cloth, and I scrubbed them things. Man, my coals are clean.
Yeah.
And so after letting it thaw for about 8 hours with some fans running, sweating a little bit, I went and did some errands. I was, all this kind of stuff, just not to sit here and sweat in my own house. I woke up Monday morning and I was cold, and my AC has ran better since I bought this condo in the last 3 days. So like,
wow.
Shout out to YouTube. Shout out, no free shout out YouTube.
Yeah. YouTube
for coming in clutch, because it wasn't getting enough air with that dirty air filter on one side, the clogged drain pipe on the other. I got that fixed. And like, again, I wake up cold. It is fantastic.
Right. I know. I was here. I woke up, I guess it's been about 3 weeks ago. I woke up and when we leave the house, I bump the AC up to 74, 75. When we get home, I bump it down to 70. And so I woke up, and it was when it was 100 degrees outside back then, Woke up, and it was 77 degrees in the house, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. Maybe I just forgot to bump it back down. And so what had happened is I had sent my daughter to do it. So I didn't actually see what it was set on before she started changing it. So I wasn't 100% sure if I had lowered the temperature or not. So I was like, well, fine, I'll just lower it. I'll work just around the corner. I'll come back in a couple hours and see what it's at. And I come back in a couple hours at like 8:30 in the morning, and it's risen to 79. And I was like, okay, got to get somebody back over here. And so I called a guy just like you did, and he spent about an hour here. He replaced the capacitor. Yeah, he replaced the capacitor, and then when he plugged the capacitor back in, the fan motor blew up. So then he replaced the fan motor, and I was out $360. So yeah, it's bad, and it was a bad time. Good time for business if you're in an HVAC when it was 100 degrees outside in August. Bad for the homeowner because you're talking about being at somebody's mercy. Try your air conditioner going out and it's 102 degrees outside. You will literally do whatever it takes, pay whatever dollar amount. So
yeah. Well, you're not wrong, man. And
it's definitely a beef.
Yeah. So the beef is not only the AC work, but the beef is people who come in and try and rob you. Like he thought he'd found some schmuck that he could charge $12,000 for a new unit. And I'm like, bro, like I may have been born tonight, but it wasn't last night. I'm gonna at least do some homework before. And so I will not be calling said company again. And I will make sure that I YouTube everything before I call out again.
Yeah. My Bucks beef of the week is more offensive than your air conditioning guy, and it's the week 3 matchups in college football. I'm telling you, I hate conference realignment. I like the familiarity of opponents and regional matchups in college sports. I think it's what makes it beautiful. It's what you know people that root for the other teams. Every other team you could play, somebody that's a fan of that team because you're all in the same region of the world. But the best thing that could come out of this is one day when we end up with 4 super conferences or whatever, that we get rid of all these cupcake games because it is just an absolute trash schedule. Week 1 is okay. You get your marquee kickoff. Everybody's feeling hot and heavy, and you get some good ones. Week 2 had 2 ranked matchups. Ole Miss and Tulane, Alabama and Texas were the only 2 ranked matchups. This week, week 3, there are 25 games with ranked teams in it. You know what that means? It's not one single ranked team plays another one. It's just awful. And so there's just, case in point, and I know Deion's a big deal, but College Game Day is going to Colorado State. You know
Right.
that the slate is bad when College Game Day is going to Colorado State only because of Deion.
Right. I thought they would wait another week because they've got Oregon next week. They got USC coming up, and they may still go to those because I think
but they've got better competition.
Right. And so you're absolutely right. Deion's the story right now, but there's just not I had 8 games, and I had a few more last week to pick from, and I was able to get 8 pretty easily for our picks that we'll go over here in just a little bit. But I was scraping to get 7 for this week. It's just not great matchups.
So week 4, you've got Ole Miss at Alabama. That's a College Game Day. I mean, Alabama's loss didn't help that any.
But it's still an option.
UCLA, Utah, like you said, Oregon, Colorado, Ohio State, Notre Dame, which is where they will be in South Bend next week for Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Yeah, 100%, because they'll both be undefeated for that. And we're not
Iowa,
a game
Penn
day,
State. So.
Yeah, not a game day candidate, but State and South Carolina will be a good football game. There's a much better slate starting next week.
The second best game this week has got to be Mississippi State LSU.
Yeah.
And that's saying something because that's something State fans get excited about. That'll be a game that SEC fans get excited about because it's a conference game and the best conference game that you have available to watch this week. But nationwide, that's not going to draw.
And what's sad is UT and Florida are also this week, and that's normally a massive rivalry. It's a big game, but Florida sucks. There's 2 ways around that.
Yeah. So
but that's
my beef of the week. I just wish that we would ditch. And I know that these games, these pay games, keep the lights on in a lot of football programs, like Ole Miss, not Tulane, but like Mercer or like Southeast Louisiana that Mississippi State's play. This funds the whole program for a season, but it's just preseason at best. And you're not, football season is 12 games long. Regular season is 12 games long. To take a third of that is just garbage. Yeah. And play nobody. Ole Miss is even playing. I mean, props to Ole Miss, I guess. I mean, they're at least playing Georgia Tech, which is Power 5, but Georgia Tech's terrible. So.
Yeah. Because then you have those years that roll through. You'll still get games like this year's non-conference, Alabama and Texas, but you look at Georgia's schedule and just the way everything kind of fell. And I to Georgia's credit, I will say they had Oklahoma scheduled this year, but they dropped it because they're joining the conference next year. I'm surprised Alabama didn't do the same, but they'd already done one of the homes. This was
had a home and home. They've already played one of them.
Right. They had last year, and then Georgia and Oklahoma were supposed to be this year and next year, so they just canceled it. But because of that, this Ball State and UT Martin and these teams are going to friggin' maul. And I have zero desire to watch Georgia at 11 o'clock, beat up on UT Martin.
And I mean, I'm honest to you about Ole Miss as well. I try to be totally honest. There's nothing about opening weekend against Mercer that does anything for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see the boys back in maroon and white, but it's Southeastern Louisiana. When we played K-State a couple years ago or Oklahoma State, those got me excited.
Right.
Not Southeastern Louisiana. No offense to the other Bulldogs or the Lions. No offense to the Lions down there.
Yeah. So just get rid of these pay games. Everybody play a 12 Power 5 games. Increase the SEC games to at least 9, and play 3 Power 5 conference games.
Yeah, and they could be group of 5. You can pick from the ACC or Conference USA game in there, but at least they're Power 5 teams with some competition. But there should be at least one from the Power 5, whether that's an ACC, Big Ten opponent.
All Power 5. That's what I want to get to. I don't want to no more group of 5. That's what I want to get to. And that's what I hope this conference realignment leads to is just getting away from the NCAA as a whole, starting your own organization of 60 teams or 70 teams that are all on equal playing field, and there's no cupcakes.
Yeah, I don't know that the SEC will ever go to that because of how strong the SEC conference is, but I have been seeing a lot of traction. And again, this is probably just Twitter exercises, which can be productive and fun sometimes.
Good for conversation, at least.
Around a Premier League college football.
Yeah, I love the relegation idea.
Like you have this top tier and you got teams that are fighting for their lives to stay in there. And if not, then you're relegated down and you're relegated down. And you'll see teams like Stanford and Oregon State that not get picked up by a conference that get relegated. Vanderbilt should be relegated. And then you have more competitive football. You can play in the Premier League against the Premier League and then the Champion League or whatever. And then the whatever they call it, the Bush, like the old NASCAR, the old Bush League down there. Playing
the truck series. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, I like the idea of relegation. You have, say, 40 teams or 60 teams. You know, you just say you have 4 conferences of 15 teams. You know, that gets you to 60 teams. And then, you know, the bottom, you say take the top 50 and relegate the bottom 10. And then you'll have teams like that start off in the lower league, like Memphis, your Power Five. I mean, your Group of 5 schools like Memphis and
SMU,
Tulane, all them. Then they are the ones fighting to replace Vanderbilt, and like you said, you know, the other garbage schools like Navy. I mean, you know, whatever.
Watch yourself. We're patriotic on this podcast.
I don't know. They're terrible. Yeah, they're terrible. So.
And then you can even do like a Premier League championship. You can make like a Champion League championship. So it makes it like competitive. Like, again, it's the you know, not a participation trophy, but like a consolation prize. But it makes that middle tier more competitive. So like if you win the middle league, then you're automatically bumped up.
Listen, I'm even cool. Like if each region, and this would have to reset the whole conferences altogether. But say the SEC. So if you look in soccer, if that's what we're going to use as a model, you've got the Bundesliga, and then you've got the Premier League, and you've got the what's the Spanish league, La Liga, and all the different, you know, you've got the Spanish and the German and the English league and all that. And so you do that here and say you've got the Southeastern League, which you would have your premier level of Southeastern League, which could be your 16 SEC schools, and then below them you would have Memphis, Tulane, Southeast Louisiana, Troy, South Alabama, UAB.
Coastal.
Like, yeah, those guys all fighting to jump up and take a bite out of, you know, the SEC itself. You know, for a Vanderbilt or a Kentucky in a down year or Florida right now, like to be relegated because you're bad. It would force competition. It would force competitiveness. I like it. Yeah. So I mean, I've sat through a 2-10, a 3-9 Ole Miss season before, and I know that those seasons I've seen them lose to Jack State. You know, Jack State would have gotten us. You know, we'd have been playing in the. You say the SEC relegates to the Sun Belt.
The Fun Belt. There you go.
Yeah,
I like it. You know, I mean, like you said, I've been in the stadium when I was on the sideline when Mississippi State lost to Maine on a visit. I was at Alabama when they lost to La Tech in Houston, and it's just like it's ugly. It's ugly football. And if that, you know, gets you relegated to the Sun Belt for a little bit and then you work your way back up, I think it's a great win for college football fans across the country. And look at us here on the podcast. That's why we need sponsors, so we can get this message out to more people, because we are solving the issues for the people on this podcast. Yeah. I would hate to I can't sit here with a straight face and say that we have come up with something that has not been talked about before. But I do co-sign the idea of setting up a relegation style system for college football. You hear that, NCAA? We're coming for you. Yeah. Just get rid of them. What they've done with that Northeast, that Tez, what's his name, at North Carolina? What they've done with that guy, not granting him a year of eligibility because his school shut down their program over COVID, is just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I cannot wait for the NCAA to just burn. We've got one in Jaquarius Spivey at Mississippi State. Have you seen all that saga? No. So he transferred. He started at Mississippi State. He transferred to TCU because we did away with the tight end position under Mike Leach. He wanted to come back and play his last year of eligibility with the guys that he started with in Starkville. Practiced with us. He was the number 2 tight end behind Ryland, the transfer from Georgia, but was going to be in a lot of packages and had a lot of stuff. He's a big guy, you know, very going to be a good part of our offense. We played Southeastern Louisiana on Saturday. On Thursday afternoon, the NCAA said, he's ineligible because a guy who is no longer employed by TCU told him, look, you're playing in the College Football National Championship in a new semester. Let's get you registered at TCU just in case you don't transfer. And he said, look, I'm transferring, but you're an academic advisor. You know what you're doing. You work with athletes. I trust you.
You've got to be a registered student if there's a shot of you playing in the national championship game.
And so he registered him at TCU. He then transfers to Mississippi State. That was back in March, right? All the way now till the end of August, early September. Then they come out and say, nah, actually you're ineligible. Yeah. And that's such a shame, man, that we're robbing these kids to get from North Carolina of eligibility for stupid rules.
The North Carolina kid is something of it's more heinous than anything I've heard of, because you granted this, everybody has got a 6th year of eligibility because of COVID, but because for some reason he's not getting it, and his school literally shut down their football program during the COVID year when everybody else played and got that year for free. He didn't get to play. So, I mean, he genuinely has a year left, and they wouldn't give it to him. But
yeah, they were, I mean, even just today, Nick Fitzgerald, they interviewed him on the Thunder and Lightning podcast ahead of the Mississippi State LSU game. And he's like, hey, I still got a COVID year. I could come back and use that. Like, just jokingly, but like, everybody got one. Why not give this kid one?
Right. I wish y'all would bring back Nick Fitzgerald. I think that'd work out great.
I mean, it did the last time he played LSU, we won 37-7, so it worked out pretty well.
How many years ago was that, Rusty?
That's 2017. I mean, it's been a minute.
Yeah, that's my point. Not that it was
a joke. Yeah. It was obviously a joke.
Bring back Joe Moorhead while you're at it too.
Anyway, we're moving right along with that one into Drew. I fancy us pretty smart fellas when it comes to picking college football games, but our Instagram followers might be more smarter.
Yeah, I do not in the slightest consider you smart when it comes to picking games against the spread. In fact, I think you were quite an idiot when it comes to picking games against the spread.
I'll remember
Maybe not this week, but
I'll remember that in about 5 minutes.
Track record speaks.
I'll remember that in about 5 minutes.
Remember when you used to do Buckets picks and you went like 0 for 7 every week?
No, I won a couple the second and third time, but that first time was ugly.
1 and 6.
Well, you joined me in my misery this week. So last week we picked 8 games.
I did get Texas right.
So Drew and I both went 3-5 against the spread last week. So we are tied at 3-5. So those comments might be being an idiot. Right back at you. We're both 3-5. So
what games did I win?
So Drew won Ole Miss, Texas, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Texas, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma were the 3 that you won. And then I won the Ole Miss, Wake Forest, and Oklahoma game. And then we put it out to our Instagram followers. Again, we had one of our highest participations in the history of the Two Buck Sports Podcast. So shout out everybody that participated. We really appreciate it. Our listeners went 4-4. They were 1 game better than us. So nice job to our Instagram followers. That ain't bad. It's 500. You're playing 500 football, and you can't beat that most years.
Hey, when you're at the casino, if you go 500, you can play a long time.
A long time. That'd get you in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So our listeners they went 69% on Alabama, got that one wrong.
Yeah.
They lost on A&M with 58% on A&M, but they went 62% on App State. Our listeners were fading North Carolina at 19 points, and so nice job.
They won that one. Yeah.
They won that one. Nice job. Upset alert for sure. Our listeners picked Auburn at 77%, so they got that one wrong with us. Our listeners picked Wake Forest at 92%. They know ball. Wake Forest won that game. They picked Oklahoma at 82%, and they picked Ole Miss at 64%. And then we were dead even, 50-50 at Mississippi State and Arizona. So, again, thank y'all for participating. We really appreciate it. Means a lot to us. I will say, if we back up even further.
I got Colorado right, too. You missed me on that one.
We didn't pick Colorado. It wasn't one of our games. I think you said that was like when you're earlier in the game, but of our official picks.
We didn't pick that one?
No, I left that one off. I thought about it when I was watching it. And then last week we posted our top 4 for our playoff prediction, and our listeners said 36% said that y'all are both crazy.
Yes.
9% said that Drew's list was correct.
That was probably just my vote.
55% said that mine was better. So Hail State to all of our listeners out there.
That was the deciding factor is how many Mississippi State fans voted.
Listen, I think it was more Alabama and Michigan, but anyway, we still just letting y'all know.
I think we got a lot of Michigan fans, or
Probably. But again, thank y'all so much for participating in those. Those are fun. We really enjoy that. We've got some more picks coming up at the end of the show. We'll definitely put those out there. So we'll be posting those again and see where you're at. So, Drew, you watched a lot of college football this week. So give me some thoughts on what you saw.
Yeah. So first off, I text you because I remember saying that I text you and I was like, I don't know. I just feel really bad about picking Colorado. For some reason, I thought we picked the Colorado game, and I picked Colorado.
I remember
I talked highly about Colorado.
You picked it when we talked about the game that they were going to be undefeated going into Oregon, but I missed, and it was not one of our official picks.
But what I just got to listening to College Game Day and listen to people talk and seeing the betting trends, and the trend that always scares me is like 90% of the money was on Colorado, but the line was not moving. You would think if all the money comes in, they're going to raise the line to discourage people from betting Colorado. So it's almost like Vegas was welcoming everybody. Just keep betting on Colorado. And anytime that Vegas takes in that much money on one side and leaves the line, that's a flashing red light for me, because those casinos and resorts in Las Vegas are not built on them losing bets. And they took a bath on Colorado this week. And so I told you I wish that I would have taken Nebraska. It turns out I was right, and then I was wrong. So because Colorado just boat raced Nebraska. Nebraska has one of the two worst quarterbacks I've seen this year. That guy and the Arizona quarterback was awful.
Yeah.
We'll get to that, but yeah. So that's what I watched in the morning, the 11 o'clock time zone there. We watched a lot of Colorado, Nebraska, and it really just got out of hand. Then we watched Ole Miss. I went over to my dad's house, like we try to do. We try to watch most games together, me and my dad, and we'll just get into Ole Miss, Mississippi State. How's that sound? That's where I can. Do you want to get into that now?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Works for me, buddy.
Because I mean, we'll talk about Alabama and Texas, but outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones Mississippi State, the only ones I had queued up. Auburn won a collegiate football game with 230 yards of total offense. So if Auburn's bad, Cal is worse.
I was wrong about that. I should have known it. Justin Wilcox is a really good defensive-minded coach. He's never got any players. They can't score touchdowns in American football. They're kind of like Iowa of Northern California. They've got a really good defense, and it's hard to go play there.
And I wish I could find – I saw a tweet like yesterday, and I meant to like it, and I didn't. I don't know why I didn't, but it was talking about like what you were – to your point earlier is the last thing I'll say before I shut up. Let's talk about Ole Miss. But Deion against Vegas and just how much money they're losing and how he is an absolute nightmare. Because like you're saying, the money pours in on him, but people believe in him. But on paper, per Vegas and per stats, looking at last year in history trends – Colorado shouldn't be good. They're not factoring in the fact that they had 44 transfer players.
Yeah, I mean, they got 86 new players on the team this year.
I mean, that's it, yeah.
And how, if you're Vegas and you are a handicapper, how can you even start to put a line on this when you virtually know nothing? What Vegas is going to end up doing now is making these – you can tell me in a minute, I'm sure, what the line on Colorado State is. But I imagine it is massive because Vegas at this point is just going to try – to win on the other side. You know, they're going to try to make this line so big to where they can get even money because people are wanting to bet on Colorado.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Ole Miss and Tulane, word came out. It kind of was talked about all week that Michael Pratt may not play. He kind of got up gimpy late in their week 1 game and had a bone bruise in his knee. You know, it was. You kind of all week thought, you know, he's banged up, but there's no way he won't play. But early on, or getting close to game time, around lunchtime on Saturday, word got out that Michael Pratt was not going to play for Tulane. And that immediately I was like, okay, well, that's a win. You know, it's a win for Ole Miss. What I thought, you know, I came on this podcast, said 14 to 17 point win for Ole Miss with Michael Pratt. Is what I was expecting. I thought we'd just blow the doors off of them at that point. Turns out maybe the team did as well. Kai, shoot, I just went blank on the cat's name. The backup quarterback for Tulane, he got off to a really hot start. Rusty, what I think happened in this game is what happens to most teams when you play your first game of importance against a team that that's could be equal to you, is Mercer provided no resistance at all. And
Yep.
I came out here and I was like, they were terrible, but we put up 73 points. We beat them as bad as we possibly could have. It's as good as you could have done against Mercer. But what happened is you didn't get those meaningful reps for that no-name team that you played in week 1. So you go to Tulane in New Orleans. It's 93 degrees.
So hot.
And it feels like 100 and something on the field. It's 2:30. And Tulane just hit us in the mouth. And they did it. They didn't blow the doors off of us by any means. But at the line of scrimmage was very, very concerning for me as an Ole Miss fan watching that game, because offensively and defensively, our line was going backwards at the snap every time. It wasn't pretty. We started the game the same way we started against Mercer. 3 plays, touchdown drive. This is easy. This is just like cake. And then just like Mercer, we let Tulane drive down and score and tie us. And from that point forward, it was Tulane's game for the half. Going into the half, it was 24-14. Is that right, Rusty?
Yes.
24-17. I'm sorry.
17, 20. I think it's 24.
17. It was.
Yeah. Because it was like a touchdown game at the half.
So it was 17-10 at the half.
17-10. It was 7-point spread.
Yeah, at the half, it's very discouraging. Quinshon Judkins has not been himself, and I think that goes 2 ways. One, the offensive line, like I said, has not been getting any push, but 2, he is not breaking any tackles. It's what made him so special last year is he was slippery. He's not a scat back. He's not small by any means, but he was very elusive and he was very slippery, and he bounced off a lot of would-be tacklers. It seemed like the first guy never got him down last year. And so I don't know if he's adjusting, if he's ramping up, and they're, maybe he just doesn't have his sea legs yet. I know the offensive line struggles is attributing to this as well, but I'm starting to get a little concerned about that. He had 40 yards rushing, I do believe, on 18 carries for 48 yards. That's less than 3 yards a carry. Just was not pretty for him against Tulane. But as a team, you come out of halftime, and it says a lot about Pete Golding. He made some really good adjustments at half. It was 17-10 at the half. You outscored Tulane 20-3 in the second half, and they figured it out. I think when you go up against, and I feel like I'm being a little scatterbrained, so I hope everybody's staying with me here. But when you playing for a guy like Michael Pratt, who is as dynamic as Michael Pratt, and it's not a given that he's not playing, and it's a team with Tulane that doesn't really have a too deep at quarterback, they did not prepare for somebody to sit in the pocket like Kai Horton did. And so they planned for Michael Pratt. The game plan was for Michael Pratt. And then when it came out that he wasn't playing, they just ran with the Michael Pratt game plan. And when Kai Horton sat in the pocket and threw deep balls, it kind of worked in Tulane's favor. But some key adjustments were made at the half. Kai Horton struggled mightily in the second half. He ended up 15 for 37, 231, a touchdown and a pick. And so it just was not a good game for him by the end of it. The score actually is more lopsided than it actually was because of a late scoop and score by the defense. Ole Miss was up 10, had a scoop and score by Jared Ivey that made it 17. It made my prediction correct because I said 14-17 points. I will still take 100% credit for that, despite it being a defensive touchdown. So one other thing I wanted to talk about is something that I haven't seen from Ole Miss in a long time. And I don't want to get in. I don't want to be the guy that's talking about kickers. But I don't know. Did you watch this game, Rusty? Were you watching
I watched
back half of this
until
game.
about the end of the third quarters when we started getting ready to go.
So Lane is Mr. He's Joey Freshwater. He's going to shoot from the hip. He's going to put it. He likes to he plays football the way James Holzhauer plays Jeopardy. He goes all in. And in a 7-point game, late in the fourth quarter, about I think it was between 3 and 5 minutes to go in the quarter. Ole Miss has got the ball in the Tulane 30-ish yard line. It's 4th and 1, and Ole Miss lines up to go for it and gets a false start, and it backs them up to the 39-yard line. It's what it ended up being. So 35-yard line. 4th and 6 from the 39. And this is textbook. Lane's going to go for it, try to end it here. But what he did is he reverted back to Lane Kiffin circa Oakland Raiders and trotted the kicker out there to attempt a 56-yard field goal, which missing it would give Tulane the ball at the 40-yard line, down by 7 with plenty of time and timeouts. It was just the biggest pit in my stomach when I saw him trot that kicker out there. And dang it, if that dude didn't absolutely pipe it from 56, would have been good from 66. Mm-hmm. I've never yelled over a field goal kick in my life. And just, it shows the confidence Lane has in the kicker. We've got 2 kickers for some reason. They're both good. The one that made it, both of their names are Caden. And so the Caden that got out there and kicked that 56-yarder to win it, hats off to that guy. That iced it. Like I said, a strip sack and a scoop and score put us up 17 and let us start dancing as that game went down. But I think it was a good tune-up, and I think that coaches, especially SEC, I know Nick Saban loves it, and Kiffin's is a Saban disciple. You love it when you almost lose to teams that you should beat. I truly believe that Nick Saban likes the team to get scared, because he will have a whole week, Lane will, of telling this team, you played like crap. You're lucky you won that game. You should have gotten beat by Tulane. A freaking American team came out and was beating you by 10 at the half. Like, this game, you played unacceptable. You need to get on your knees and thank God that you were able to escape with a win. That's what he is thriving on, that kind of rhetoric this week, going into Georgia Tech this week, Alabama next week. It's the tune-up that you want, and I hope that Ole Miss comes out and just lays waste to Georgia Tech this week. I think they are a 27-point favorite. No, I'm sorry, 18-point favorite. I was thinking of Georgia. They're an 18-point favorite at home against Georgia Tech this weekend. I hope they beat them by 35 again and go in with as much confidence in week 4 headed to Alabama for week 4 with as much confidence as possible.
So a couple thoughts, because I did watch a lot of that game. I think the more talented team obviously won and pulled away late. Ole Miss should have more depth than Tulane. SEC absolutely should have more depth. I think if Mike Pratt plays in that game, we're having a whole different conversation. I don't know that Tulane can find a way to win, but I think they have a much better shot, and especially with I think the biggest thing that surprised me was the push that Tulane was able to get on the offensive and defensive line. They were clearing some running lanes. They had success in the trenches in the first half. What I watched in the third quarter was what I expected to happen. Ole Miss ended up pulling away. Ole Miss was clearly the better team, and they just leaned on them. I am a little bit surprised, like you said, with Judkins' absence so far this year. As of right now, statistically and from the PFF stats, the best running back in the state of Mississippi is Ian Starkville, which I was completely surprised by, and I think he gets it together. It's still early. Ole Miss is still piecing it together. Judkins is obviously a stud. Yeah. And he will obviously get it together. But I was a little surprised that he didn't have more success against a tired Tulane defense in the second half. Because even coming out of halftime, like the push that they were getting in the first half was gone. And Ole Miss was having some success moving Tulane's defensive line, but he just didn't look the same.
Well, in game script, so to go back to Mercer, and then I want to hit on the depth thing you brought up just a minute ago. Go back to Mercer. Mercer just decided they're only going to do one thing, and they're going to put 8 people in the box, and that's why Jackson Dart led the whole country in QBR. The highest graded PFF passer in week 1 was Jackson Dart, and it's because he had solo matchups because they were selling out against Judkins. This week, offensive line was obviously a problem. Game script was a problem because you got down 10. He is not really catching a lot of balls out of the backfield. I wish he would get more. He gets a few, but game script wise, they like to run him, and it kind of got behind it. When it didn't work, we were going 3 and out a lot. And so you kind of had to pivot, and then they put the ball back in Jackson Dart's hands, and that's when they came back and then separated themselves, is when they put the ball in Jackson Dart's hands. Regarding the depth, Ole Miss depth is really struggling right now at skill positions. At wide receiver, our boy Zachary Franklin, they're aiming for him to come back for Alabama. He still hadn't played. I don't think he's going to play against Georgia Tech this weekend.
It's a hamstring, right? Wasn't it a hamstring?
Yeah, it's a knee. I think it was. I think he had his knee scoped in the offseason. But then our boy, I'm sorry, the older I get, the worse I get with names.
You're telling me.
Trey Harris. Trey Harris, who in 2 games has caught 5 touchdowns. Really, in 1 game and 1 drive, he's caught 5 touchdowns. But then he had an MRI sprain. He's going to be out 4 weeks. You've got 1 tight end that's playing. Michael Trigg, who is Mr. Undependable anyways, is the only tight end playing because Priest Corn is yet to play. The cat from Hudson Wolf from Hardin County High School on his first catch against Mercer, got a bum shoulder, so he's not playing. And so that, I think, is one of the bigger aspects to Judkins' struggles, is that you're really just got 5 guys on the offensive line that's blocking for you. And in Lane's scheme, he does use a lot of tight ends right next to the line to chip, and even big receivers. You know, he used Mingo a lot to chip, motion him across the line to chip the end or the outside linebacker. You just don't have the personnel there right now that Lane likes to run the ball behind. Again, they're not season-ending injuries, so hopefully you can ramp up once you get healthy and you start seeing a more normal rushing attack from Quinshon Judkins. I mean, he is the SEC leading rusher last year, freshman of the year, 1,500 yards rushing and 17 touchdowns. I mean, he's good. He didn't lose that.
No.
So you've got to figure out how to make him successful despite having depth issues out wide and at your tight end position.
Yeah, because the biggest difference, like you said, he's breaking tackles last year, but he was breaking those tackles at the linebacker position.
Right.
He's now being
on
hit
the
in the
second
backfield.
level. That's
he's
right.
getting hit in the backfield, and it's really hard because he's not a big guy. He's great at shucking tackles, but bigger guys are better at meeting those defensive linemen in the backfield and still turning into something positive. When Tulane was getting that big push in the middle and meeting him 2 yards deep, there was just nothing he could do.
He's nowhere near. You talking about big running backs? He's nowhere near the Yeti that is Derrick Henry. But the most effective I ever saw anybody run a defense against Derrick Henry was that 2015 team that went to Tuscaloosa and won. It's because they were running a 3-5 defense with 5 running a dime on the back half, and then they were chipping him at his knees every time in the backfield just because if you don't let him get ahead of steam, he's easy to tackle. But if you let him get to trucking, you're not going to tackle him. And it's kind of the same thing with all running backs. You can't make people miss if you're standing still.
Right.
It just
when you're immediately getting the ball from Jackson Dart and there's a defensive lineman that you're having to negotiate around instead of getting that 2 or 3 yard head start, it completely takes away your momentum and it completely changes the game.
They like to say with Barry Sanders and all those guys, they could make them miss in a phone booth. I can make you miss in a phone booth. Well, that's true, but you've got momentum, very rarely, probably Barry Sanders is the only person I've ever seen that jukes somebody as he's standing still receiving a football,
Barry Sanders, LaDainian Tomlinson were the
Yeah.
only ones that could generate forward momentum with a lateral step. Like
Right.
you said, like it's very difficult to have to make that move and then
Burst.
get running downhill. Like it takes 2 or 3 yards to get downhill. And if you give guys a chance to get to that, then it's a much more successful run. But I
Darren
agree. Barry
Sproles was
Sanders
always
and
good at
LT
that.
and Shady McCoy could
Yeah.
generate forward momentum with a lateral step. They're the only running backs I've seen to do that.
Yeah. So there's definitely areas to clean up. I'm glad that they struggled. Yeah, I like to see struggle.
You wanna see
I want
that
to see
early.
them. I want to see it early because, it could be what Alabama went through, and Texas is a whole nother beast, and we'll get to that. But to get popped in the mouth at your first real competition makes you wonder how good you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you get popped in the mouth and lose, you're just like, okay, maybe we're just bad.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, we got hit in the mouth, we saw some adversity, we came out the other side, tweak these things, and maybe you can have a really successful season rather than starting off with a loss.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, sometimes these early losses. How many times have we seen Alabama lose early to Ole Miss or LSU, and then just go on a run, an absolute friggin' tear?
That's what I told my wife, and I told my dad when we were sitting there watching the Alabama game Saturday night. I was like, I don't want to be the second team to try to beat Alabama. I want to be the first team to try to beat Alabama.
Hell hath no fury like a Nick Saban team after a loss. But we'll get into that here in a minute. Do you want to talk about Mississippi State? Anything else you want to add about Ole Miss?
No, just that it was a test. It's not anywhere close to the best test you'll have this year, but I'm glad you showed some composure. You showed some will. You showed a lot of fight. Been really impressed with Jackson Dart again. I don't think that team, if you played Tulane in the second half of last year's season, that Ole Miss team folds. This team didn't.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mississippi State played the late game. I'll be honest, again, I missed the first 3 quarters. I watched them on Sunday while I was out killing time from waiting on my AC to catch back up. But I saw the end of it, and I saw enough. And then watching the replay, the Mississippi State offensive line's got to get better. That's kind of where we start. Very similar to Ole Miss. We struggled protecting Will Rogers. What started off as a really, really good game, I'll back up. Mississippi State, the first 4 possessions that Arizona had the football ended in a turnover and 14 Mississippi State points. We're up 14-7 at halftime with 4 turnovers. That should at least be 21-24 to nothing. Like, there is no reason that should be a 1-touchdown game when you've created 4 turnovers in 4 drives. It was almost like Kevin Barbary, and he's new to the SEC position. Zach Arnett's a new head coach, and they both have come out and said we were way too conservative, especially in the second half. And Zach Arnett said, I need to be more vocal about staying aggressive and putting these teams to bed. But it's like he thought we were going to be able to run the football with success, and we did. I mean, Woody Marks finished with 123 yards rushing. He had a very good game. A lot of open lanes in the first half. They kind of went away in the second half, but Will Rogers was under pressure all night from a revamped off a defensive line for Arizona. Not the same D-line we faced last year. They had 3 transfer guys starting that played really, really well. But Woody Marks still averaged 5 yards a carry. Seth Davis, 6 yards a carry. And we ended up pulling out a win. As you saw, we won it overtime. It was definitely a test. But when you're up 21-7 in the third quarter, there's no reason that game should go to overtime. Kevin Barbary went super vanilla. Will Rogers only took 17 pass attempts in a football game. That's not balanced. Like, we rushed for 145 yards. We threw for 162. Just a very, very pedestrian, vanilla offensive game. And I've seen crap on Gene's page and Twitter about, we're saving film for LSU. Like, that's stupid. Why didn't we do that against Southeastern Louisiana? This is a Power 5 team that you need to open the playbook and beat.
Question your source when you're reading Gene's page. And when 100%. You're reading fan sites in general.
That's why shout out, no free shout out. One of the best Twitter accounts is Message Board Geniuses. If you're not following it, follow it right now. It is hilarious to listen to some of these takes about firing coaches and all this stuff, but I digress. Again, we're very balanced. We ran the ball a lot, threw the ball, should have thrown the ball more. Run defense. Our defense looked great. Honestly, it's not our defense. They gave our offense so many short fields, gave up 91 yards rushing. But that pass defense was a little tough. Shout out Jet Johnson. He had 2 interceptions from the Mike position. Your SEC Defensive Player of the Week. Just a phenomenal football game. 11 tackles, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups. I think it was 4 tackles for a loss and a couple quarterback pressures. Had a great football game.
Yeah, he's up for a second contract, I think.
Yeah, this is 9th year in Starkville.
I mean, do you know if Mississippi State's got his bird rights, or is he going to enter free agency after this year?
It was the same with Austin Williams. Austin Williams there was 9 years. Jet Johnson's there 9 years. It is what it is, man. Had a great football game. A couple thoughts. Will Rogers has got to be more aggressive, and I think part of that's Kevin Barbary, and part of that's Will Rogers may not be able to stretch the field. But we've got to be able to stretch the field against some of these teams. We're just going to get congested, and Woody Marks is not going to get his running lanes. A true running quarterback is going to absolutely wreck us. Delaria is a good rushing quarterback. He had a good rushing game. He was able to, extend the plays, move the pocket, and create some wins for him to the tune of 340 yards through the air. I mean, he had a decent game. Jaden Daniels could possibly rush for 300 yards this weekend if we're not ready. It was nice having Tulu so involved in the offense. He had 2 early touchdowns. Again, we played well, but you can't have 5 turnovers and only win by a touchdown in overtime. That cannot happen. We had 5 turnovers in the game. Is
Tulu's real name Ledietrich?
Yeah, Ledietrich Griffin.
Okay.
Tulu's much easier. Rolls off the tongue a lot better.
Well, I'll tell you what doesn't roll off the tongue. Ledietrich.
No, it does not. What a name. Yeah. Last couple thoughts. Our scheme was tough on defense, particularly second half. Matt Brock is a young defensive coordinator. He was a linebacker coach last year. Arnett is completely trusting him with the play calling, and he's not interfering with it, and I appreciate that. But our scheme in the second half was rough. We allowed them to get back in the game. Part of that was the offensive ineptitude. I mean, crap, we forced a turnover. Jet Johnson had his second pick of the night with like 2 minutes to go, and we went 3 and out and punted right back to him. They get the game time field goal to send it to overtime. Shout out Jeffrey Pittman. Man, I love Mississippi. We were very underrated for our JUCO football system from, Northeast, ICC, Northwest, Colin, East Mississippi, Mississippi Gulf Coast. We have some dogs in the JUCO system. And Jeffrey Pittman is one of them. He transferred up from Mississippi Gulf Coast. He scored the game-winning touchdown. He's just a spark plug. He ain't real tall, but he's just short, stout. Caught a pass out in the flat and just willed a touchdown for us. Broke 2 tackles, scored the game-winning touchdown that ultimately won us the game. But what we have to clean up, and it was so frustrating, like one of the things about Mike Leach and then Joe Moorhead before him, we were a very undisciplined, penalty-happy football team. Millions of penalties. I remember, Drew, I think it was against Memphis. It was, because I was so pissed. We got the opening kickoff, and on our first play from scrimmage, we got to delay a game. You have that play planned on Tuesday. Like, know what you're running on Tuesday, and somehow there is 15 minutes still on the clock and you got to delay a game. Just mind-numbing penalties. Well, in game 1 against Southeastern Louisiana, we had 1 penalty, and it was an aggression penalty. We had a face mask on a kickoff. Like, that's a kid trying to make a play.
Right.
Against Arizona, we had 9 penalties for 90 yards, including 4 holding calls, 2 false starts on the same kid. Like, those are mental errors.
Now, holding calls are not always mental. They are lack of speed if you're on the offensive line. That's outmatched is when you hold.
It can
more
be.
times than not.
It can be. And it can just be a bonehead. Like, the guy's past you and you just, instead of calling an Olay call, you grab some jersey. Right. But 9 penalties for 90 yards after a 1 penalty first game. Got to get that cleaned up against LSU. But all in all, I feel good about our team. We, just like you were saying earlier, we had a close game. We had success. You're up 21-7, and then they come roaring back, and you have to you have to dig deep, man. You were up 2 touchdowns, and now you're heading to overtime, right? You have to dig deep to win that football game. And championship teams, not that Mississippi State's the championship team, but good football teams win games like that. When you have no business winning, you find a way to win.
And Woody Marks in overtime, that ball that he caught and took to the end zone, that was
Jeffrey Pittman that won the game.
Oh, okay. Well, that was Stones. That was a hard nose.
Again,
Angry run.
He broke 2 tackles and was like, I am winning this football game. That's
Right.
at Mississippi Gulf Coast transfer. Shout out Jeffrey Pittman, a product of South Mississippi, just a Mississippi kid making a play. And it was 100% a will play, like you said, in a game that we had no business winning after being up 2 touchdowns. But good teams find ways to win that game. And I'm like you, we've got LSU coming to town next week, and we go on our first road game to South Carolina on the 23rd. It was a good test. It tested our moxie, it tested our mettle, and we found a way to win. It was ugly. I hated how we won. It was just like there was no business for it to be that close. But I'm really proud that we found a way to win, and I think that's going to give us some momentum heading into LSU.
All right. So these are my notes that I had. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I felt like going into this season, I wanted to be fair, and I had some hypotheses. I had some ideas that I wanted to test out. And you wanted to be a homer and not admit the possibility that it could look a lot different for Will Rogers, and I feel like I was right. But
of course you did.
I'm going to go through it here. First thing you said. Offensive line is not built to run the system. It's a point that I made. They are not big enough to run the system that Kevin Barbary wants to run. Do you object?
Kind of, because what we returned is our big offensive line. We had a transfer in Percy Lewis, who's now playing tackle, and I don't know that it's size. It's different. It's different because we used to have 3-yard splits, and now we're right on top of one another. So it's It is a different scheme.
Given the 3-yard splits, though, when you pack it in tighter, Kevin Barbary wants a bigger offensive lineman as a model, and that was my point. And it was never going to be as extreme as Brett Bielema to Chad Morris, but that's the parallel, a much lighter parallel that I was trying to draw. But you're right. 14 points off of 4 turnovers in the first half is deplorable. That's bad. But Will Rogers, I like Will. Will is a super dude. I know people that know him intimately, personally. In fact, this guy that I know who is a close work friend of mine, he is so close with Will's father that he cheers for Mississippi State when they're not playing Ole Miss. He loves Will Rogers. He's a good kid. He vouched for him. He told me it would probably be best if he transferred. Because of the system that's run. I mean, you laid it out here, and I'm not taking a victory lap, but I do think that it's concerning going forward because Will Rogers, who is at his most lethal, is throwing the ball around the field. You're right. He doesn't have a cannon. That's never been his strong suit. It's never going to be his ticket anywhere, but it's timing. It's repetitive. It is execution. That's his game. It's executing in a wide open offense. For him to only throw the ball 17 times in a game at home, a game in which you were winning by multiple scores most of the game, to only throw the ball 17 times does not allow him to get into the rhythm that he would get into. Because when even if he started slow under those Leach teams, it was undeniable. Once it got rolling, you could not stop him. He cannot get into a rhythm only throwing the ball 17 times, and that's he completed 13 of 17.
It's efficient.
It's efficient, but I mean it's 162 yards. There is no balance on offense. Like you said that they're balanced, and they ran the ball 29 or
39 times.
39 times to 17 pass attempts. It's not balanced, and in fact, it is the exact opposite end of the spectrum that it was last year.
So you comment to that. You're absolutely right. In yardage, we were balanced, but not in play selection. Right. That's what I got at. That both Kevin Barbary and Zach Arnett said that we made mistakes in game plan. It's like Kevin Barbary got stuck on running the football and couldn't let it go. And you're 100% right. Will Rogers is a very efficient quarterback, but he's very similar to like when Mark Ingram was at Alabama. Mark Ingram was one of those guys that needed 15, 18 carries to get into rhythm. Will Rogers needs 20, 25 passes to get into rhythm because he's very efficient. On those 17 passes, he completed 13 of them with a 9.5 yard average. That's a healthy chunk on his plays. Because again, Will Rogers does not have the cannon
Yeah,
to throw the ball 30, 40
no,
yards,
you're right.
but he can hit those 10 to 15 yard passes with ease. But he needs some rhythm to get into it.
At his peak, at his best, what all we know, all that we've seen is a 3-year. I think, is this his 4th year starting or his 3rd year?
3rd year starting.
3rd year starting. Everything that we've seen is him being super efficient, commanding an offense, and being very efficient and very good running a system in which it is catch the snap, step, throw, catch, and it's timing, it's repetitive.
It's that 8 to 12
yards. It lulls
yards.
you to sleep. It is the 2023 equivalent to 3 yards in a cloud of dust that they used to just is death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
But that is
not 17 passes.
That is Will Rogers, and that is the reason why going into the season, not because I'm a hater, not because I'm an Ole Miss fan, but that is the reason why I was worried that he was not going to be the guy for this system. Because if he's only throwing the ball 17 times in a Power 5 game at home, then do you really expect Kevin Barbary to throw the ball 30 times against LSU at home this weekend?
Yes, because of what they've said in their press conferences. They realized they made mistakes. They realized they had, again, he's learning, he's growing. Last week, he threw the ball 29 times, which is much more like what we need. But in those 17 passes this week, he threw for 3 touchdowns. He completed the majority of them. And I think Barbary is learning on the job. It's one thing to be the OC. I was excited because he did good things at App State. It's one thing to be the OC at App State. It's a whole different animal to be the OC at Mississippi State. Yeah. And I think we're going to see some growth heading into LSU. LSU struggles against some things that we do well. They also excel against things that we don't do well. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll get to game predictions here in just a little bit. I still feel good going into that game. I still feel like Mississippi State is going to upset somebody this year. But it's not going to be with Will Rogers throwing the ball 17 times. And we have to throw the ball more.
I will end with this, in case you think I'm just being a hater. If you can split the difference, the biggest problem with Leach is that he was one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. He ran the ball using short passes.
Yep.
Yeah. When you drop 8, you're not going to throw the ball very well, and that's when Mississippi State struggled. And for some reason, the only time they ever tried to run the ball was against Ole Miss.
And ran with success.
Yeah, but that is exactly my point. So if you can thread the needle here and somehow be more consistent, not just in yardage at the end of the game, but also actually play design when it comes to the splits between rushing attempts and passing attempts. If you can be, I guess this may just sound obvious, but if you can be balanced and effective, that is obviously that could be a better lead for a better offensive system than what Leach had.
Yeah.
Because Leach was gimmicky. Leach was running his 7 plays on an index card, and that was that. So maybe if you can figure out, obviously Woody Marks is really, really good. Obviously, if given the opportunity in the system, Will Rogers can be very, very good. If you can figure out how to be balanced, then that Mississippi State team is not devoid of talent. It's the only question I've ever had is how scheme fits personnel this year. And you'll be honest with you, I think that if you gave Kevin Barbary truth serum, he licks his lips over Mike White a little bit.
Probably, and I think that's why Mike Wright comes back next year, which we'll get into that more as the season progresses. I think Will Rogers moves on because the system may fit Mike Wright a little bit better. But you're absolutely right. Woody Marks, shout out, man. He was the highest rated SEC running back this past weekend, 88.9, according to PFF College Football. Had a phenomenal football game. He's a great running back, but can only do so much. We swung the pendulum too far the other way. Like you were saying.
24 for 123 and 1 is an incredible stat line. And then he caught 4 passes for 32 yards. So
the guy is an absolute weapon. And, I miss Dylan Brooks. He was a great running back, but we got the better
of
the two. Dylan Brooks. There it was. I messed up my name tonight.
Hey, welcome to the Two Buck Sports Podcast. On the Zebo episode of the Two Buck Sports Podcast, Dylan Brooks has crept out of Rusty's subconscious.
Dylan Johnson, who transferred to Washington. We made it almost an hour before I messed up a name. I'll take that, man. That's a win.
There we
That's
go.
a win. But
welcome, everybody.
Yeah, now the podcast can begin. But Woody Marks is a great SEC running back. He's going to have some big games. But if we're going to beat LSU this weekend, we're going to have to be more balanced. And I do think
if you're going to beat LSU this weekend, you've got to have a perfect game. I mean, LSU is really good.
They are. We'll get into this in a minute. Yeah. Other two games of note, we kind of highlighted it, but is Texas A&M the new Clemson that they're gonna A&M once every year or every year?
That's an insult to Clemson.
Because A&M, they had no business losing to Miami in front of 2,500 fans, 2,200 of them being A&M fans. They just absolutely crapped the bed. Miami is not good. I'm not taking away from that. Taking away from their win, great job to Chris Paul and his staff. That's a good win for them. But Miami's not a good football team.
I feel robbed because I feel like Ole Miss has always beaten them and been like the last nail in their coffin, taking away all their hopes and dreams on that one Ole Miss game every year. Maybe that's giving Ole Miss too much credit. Just kind of seems where Ole Miss played Texas A&M in the calendar every year, that loss was just kind of like, all right, we're done. But to get a loss on the road at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami in front of tens of people, that's bad. We keep waiting on the meltdown, the Petrino Jimbo meltdown right there. It's coming sooner than you think because it was funny, actually. Some podcasts I listened to, some college football neutral podcasts. It's not Ole Miss. It's not, as you say, it's not SEC, but they were kind of raving about how Connor Wegman looked with Petrino calling the plays after that one game against nobody. And they're like, something's different about this. It looks competent. It flows. It's got a theme. It's got a purpose. And then to go and lose at Miami is just hysterical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Wegman threw for 336 on 53 passes with a QBR of 83, had 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Not all on his shoulders. Fine game, but you have no business losing 48 points.
48 points, yeah.
To Miami, who's been inept since the 2 Live Crew in 1999. They have not done anything in a generation. And you go down there and got embarrassed after, like you said, it was they got the Texas treatment, which we'll get to Texas here in a minute. They're back. They beat up on somebody. This is their year. They figured out Bobby Petrino. And then they went and laid an egg.
And they got blitzed in the secondary in particular. Tyler Van Dyke, 21 for 30, 374, and 5 touchdowns, no picks. As a team, including sacks, because for some reason – sacks go down as rushing yards. They, as a team, only rushed for 77 yards. Yeah. Ole Miss transfer Henry Parrish had 50, their leading carrier, but they only rushed the ball 24 times. Yeah. Xavier Restrepo, 6 for 126. Jacoby George, average. 5 for 94 and 3. I mean, they just lit up the secondary. They didn't even try to run the ball. No. I mean, they did enough. I mean, they did run the ball 24 times, but through the air, that was putrid. Yeah. For Miami. I mean, and then go ahead.
That's efficiency from Tyler Van Dyke, going 21 for 30, and just like you said, man, just absolutely lit them up. They moved the ball at will. Every drive, they moved the ball. They didn't really struggle with anything. A&M was up at one point, 17-7, and it's maybe A&M's going to figure it out. And then Miami just came out in the second half and just blew the doors off of them. I mean, they scored at halftime. It was 21-17. Miami, and they never looked back. I mean, just absolutely torched them in the second half.
And Miami didn't play a clean game either. They had 10 penalties for 115 yards, had a fumble lost. Your favorite stat, time of possession, Texas A&M dominated that, had 5 more minutes of possession than Miami. Yeah, I mean, it was funny. The only thing that could have been better is that Cal knocked off Hugh Freeze in the nightcap in Berkeley.
Yeah.
But
that's coming. You can't win too many SEC games with 230 yards of offense.
Yeah. So, let's talk Alabama and Texas.
Holy smokes, man! What a game!
It was a game, and I walked out. I say I walked out of that game. I phrase it as if I was there.
You were there.
You know, when you everybody knows this feeling if you've been to a college football game, especially the teams that if you're watching a team that you love, the walk to the car, whether win or loss, is probably the best reflection time when you're thinking about sports ever. Is the walk back to the car. I'll never forget the walk back to the car after Laquan broke his ankle and fumbled going into the end zone against Auburn. I'll never forget the walk back to the car after 4th and 25. I'll never forget the walk back to the car after Ole Miss beat Chris Leak when I was 10 years old. My dad dropped me on the field in Oxford, and I went up and asked Mike Espy and everybody for their gloves. You know, my dad thought the walk to the car. That's how that's how I think about this, Steve, as if I'm walking to the car.
That could be a great segment sponsored by our future sponsors. Is the walk to the car.
Walk to the car, brought to you by Heelys. Roll, don't just walk. Roll to the car.
Raise your scooters. We scoot to the car.
Scoot to the car. Brought to you by Heelys. But as I was thinking about it after the game, Texas just beat them. I've seen Ole Miss beat Alabama twice in my lifetime. Recently, in my lifetime, you know, and every time it made me so mad because Alabama fans be like, "Oh yeah, well, we turned the ball over 5 times in 2015," and Quincy Adebojo caught a ball that bounced off of old Harrison's dome and took it to the house. Like, y'all didn't deserve that. We gave it away. Alabama fans can't say that about that game against Texas.
No. And what was weird, Drew, about this one was it was the fourth quarter. Historically, in the fourth quarter is when Alabama beats you. They wear you down, and in the fourth quarter, they're the one pulling away. Going into that fourth quarter, Alabama had just scored with 14 seconds left to go up 16-13, and it felt like this is it. This is when Alabama pulls away and wins this football game. And they would just in 55 seconds. 55 seconds into the fourth quarter, Texas snatched the lead back and never gave it up. And they out-athleted Alabama. That was my biggest takeaway is Alabama is going to win a ton of football games this year. They're probably going to win 9, 10 football games. And they're going to play in a New Year's Six Bowl. I still think they have an outside shot if Milroe figures it out to win the West. They're not out of the mix by any means. But they are not the Alabama of old. That was one of the first times I have seen Alabama get out-athleted in a long time. They have played teams that were better. They have played teams that schemed better. But that was the first time that they were not the most talented team on the field that I have seen in a long time outside of maybe a Georgia game. They really were out-athleted in that fourth quarter, and credit Quinn Ewers, credit Steve Sarkisian for having a game plan that was efficient and effective, and they made an emphatic statement that Texas may not be back, because that's always a joke, right? Texas is back. They're back. But they are well on their way back to national relevance if they can continue this momentum. Because how many times has Texas won a big game and Texas is back and then laid an egg in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, some notes from this game that it always, if Alabama loses, you can always look at one category. They had 10 penalties for 90 yards.
Yeah, absolutely.
They killed themselves again with penalties. So Texas had 350 yards of offense. Alabama had 250. Alabama, we talk about their strength and Jalen Milroe's strength being his ability to rush the ball. He rushed the ball 15 times for 44 yards. Jace McClellan, 12 for 45. As a team, they rushed for 107 yards.
Alabama doesn't do that.
Rushing yards. No rushing touchdowns. The only 2 touchdowns they scored were through the air. Jermaine Burton caught that incredible. Milroe's highlight tape at the end of the year will have that throw to Jermaine Burton in the corner of the end zone.
Dart.
If you watch one play of college football, you would think he was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft based on that one throw.
He put it in a bucket, man. What a great throw.
Quinn Ewers was great. 350 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. You cannot beat Alabama if you turn the ball over.
And Texas didn't.
And Texas did not. I think they had
2
no
fumbles.
Turnovers.
They had 2 fumbles, and they recovered both of them.
Yeah. As I said, Alabama had 10 penalties for 90 yards. Texas had 4 for 10. It's the little things. If you're going to come at the top dog, you better not miss.
That's it. Come at the king, you best not miss. Shout out to the wire.
King, you best not miss. And the little things will kill you when you're coming at the king.
Yeah.
And they took care of their business. They made their bed that morning. They paid close attention to all details, and they just went to Tuscaloosa and won.
They just took the game from them. They out athleted Alabama, and Alabama fans do not fret. I mean, your schedule's still very favorable. You get some tough games at home. Your East opponents are Tennessee and Kentucky. Like, it's still a very manageable schedule. But on that field, at least that day, Texas was far and away the more talented, better football team. Especially, again, like, I just go back to that fourth quarter. You know, how often, Drew, have we seen it where it's a close game at the end of the third, and then Alabama just leans on you for 15 minutes, and before you know it, you've lost by 10 points?
Well, and this team is the team that can do that. That theoretically,
right?
It seems like they're going back to those early 2000s teams when you're talking about Richardson and Mark Ingram, and they're wanting to lay on you until you pass out. They're wanting to submit you, and Texas responded every single time. It was so impressive. They jumped up to number 3, I think, in the polls, and it was a well-deserved 3 based on,
that performance.
Well, yeah, it's the best win of the year. And don't look now, but Ole Miss has the best SEC win of the year, and it's not even close right now. The best win by an SEC team of the year.
Yes, again,
with
over
Tulane. A road win over a ranked Tulane.
Yes. But like looking at like
sad, but it's true.
The first 3 quarters, Alabama outscored Texas 16-13, and in the fourth quarter, Texas outscored them 21-8. 21-8 in that fourth quarter, and just whipped them. And so Texas' schedule is very favorable. You've got Baylor this weekend, who is a nightmare, 0-2. They lost to Texas State. They got Kansas the week after that, who's 2-0, but they're Kansas. They're decent. But then they got the Red River rivalry is where it really starts picking up.
One more
time.
Red
River rivalry. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, they actually changed it to the Red River Shootout for that very reason.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, Scott, got green pastures ahead for Texas and Alabama, but on Saturday night, Texas was the better football team.
All right, let's just go through real quick and tell everybody about the games we don't care to talk about. Vanderbilt lost at Wake Forest. Who cares? Georgia struggled early but beat Ball State 45-3. Who cares? Kentucky struggled with Eastern Kentucky
for a while.
Who cares? Arkansas struggled with Kent State. Who cares? Funny thing about Kent State is they had an incredible offense last year. Their head coach that had that incredible offense left and is Deion's OC at Colorado. And so they have took a step back very badly, and Arkansas still struggled. Tennessee struggled with Austin Peay. Who cares? Missouri almost lost to MTSU.
Say this. I watched a lot of Tennessee game. They struggled early, and then they pulled away late.
Who cares? You don't struggle with MTSU. With Austin Peay. In-state rivalry, I know, but
yeah.
So, anyways, that's all I've got for week number 2.
The only one, the last thing I have before we move into our picks for week number 3, NFL and fantasy football, is why do people still schedule App State, man? They're that team that's going to punch you in the mouth. They're going to find a way to win, and they almost beat North Carolina, who's a good football team.
I'm telling you.
App State's tough, man.
They must have a really good administration and a really good procedure for hiring coaches, because you look at the track record, they beat Michigan back in the day. Good. Mm-hmm. They had a really good team, and Scott Satterfield, the head coach, gets hired by Louisville. The next year, they hire Eli Drinkwitz. They have a really good team. He gets hired by Missouri. The next year, Mississippi State hires their OC. Like, whoever's making hiring decisions there does a fantastic job.
Big brain up there for sure, making great picks. But before we move on to our week 3 picks, who's your top 4 team? Who is your week 2 playoff teams?
Florida State, number 1.
Yep.
I'm shooting this from a hip because I was not prepared. I'm going to say Texas is number 2. Mm-hmm. Texas and Florida State have the 2 best wins of the year. Going into the year, I was higher on LSU than I was Alabama. That's why I've got Florida State. Mm-hmm. Just nosing them out at the top. Ole Miss struggled with Tulane, so I'm actually not going to put them in my top 4. but Colorado is still in my top 4. And Oregon falls out because I don't know if you saw Oregon's game against who were they playing last week? They had a defensive score to win the game.
It's like 13
or if
to
they
10.
were going to lose to nobody.
Was it Baylor?
No, it was. No, they're in the Pac-4 or Pac-2. Texas Tech.
Texas Tech, 38-30. They won by 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had they scored 10 points in the last minute, 10 seconds. Oregon fell out. Let's look at the rankings real quick. I think I need some help. So I've got Florida State. I've got Texas. I have got Colorado. And I'm going to go with, and keep in mind, this is based on what I've seen so far.
That's what I did this week. That's
so
exactly
far.
What
Like,
I did this week.
I don't care about anything else. I'm going to take a page out of your book, and I'm going to give the nod to Michigan. They had another really solid week this week. They played a couple of nobodies, but they played UNLV this week at home. Just beat the brakes off of them with the absence of, take it back. I take it back. Exit, abort, Michigan, Notre Dame. Sam Hartman was so good again.
Stole my thunder.
Notre Dame. I love Sam Hartman. On College Game Day, they talked about him having his rib removed last year, and his mom he wears a freaking rib around his neck like he's He's an animal. I like him. So yeah,
for sure.
That's my 4 in this order: Florida State, Texas, Colorado, and Notre Dame.
You stole some of my thunder there. I too am going by teams that I watched or looked up or paid attention to, and this one is a dig more at my Clemson friends than it is like a shout out. But I'm going Oregon State. DJ Ukulele has looked the part of an absolute beast of a quarterback. Oregon State is my number 4 team. I don't think they're going to be there at the end, but right now they're one of the 4 best teams that I have been keeping up with. They have won both games big. DJ is playing some great football. Sticking it to Dabo, saying maybe I wasn't the problem as Clemson continues to struggle. So Oregon State is my number 4 team. Number 3 is Notre Dame. I agree. Sam Hartman is the real deal. I was curious about how he was going to respond going from Wake Forest out there, and he has not missed a beat. They beat a North Carolina State team, while not one of the better teams in the country, a Power 5 ACC team, and beat them handily with weather delays, which always throws off momentum. Notre Dame is my number 3 team. I agree. Texas, number 2, a signature win beating Alabama, and then Florida State at number 1. They're still the best team I have seen all year until proven otherwise. And so we'll get those posted to Instagram. Y'all let us know what you think. Who has the better list? I have Oregon State, Notre Dame, Texas, Florida State. Drew has Notre Dame, Colorado, Texas, and Florida State. So you stole my thunder with Notre Dame.
Yeah, honorable mention, Washington State with another win against Wisconsin. This time at home.
That quarterback's good.
He was his final 2 out of. He went to Incarnate Word. His name is Cam Ward. And out of Incarnate Word, he was down to Ole Miss and Washington State, and he went to Washington State. He was good. I knew he was going to be good then, and I'd forgotten about him because that's what happens when you go to Pullman. Never go to Pullman if you can go to Oxford. Yeah. You can go play in the SEC. Don't go to Pullman. People will forget about you.
Exactly. But I don't want to be that guy that's like Notre Dame and Texas are back, but they've looked the part the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun in doing polls like this is it's going to change every week based on what we've seen, and that's how I feel like that's how the polls should be conducted anyways. There's way too much preseason bias in polls, 100%. Especially when you see teams struggle that should be better than this.
I've always been a fan of let's not release polls until week 4. Let's get a couple games under our belt, see where we're at. You get those cupcakes out of the way. You get a good game in week 3. Week 4.
And no preseason polls.
No preseason polls. The polls start after week 4. Hear ye. We have spoken. Last thing on college football, we'll roll through our picks real quick. I want to make sure we get these in so we can compete against our fans. And then we got a last couple topics. So first game, again, I'm just reaching for what I can here. Kansas State marched up and down the field and whipped Missouri last year. They are at Missouri this year and are a 5-point road favorite.
Don't know anything about this game other than the Kansas State quarterback looks a lot like Colin Klein. It gives me a lot of Colin Klein flashbacks.
Yeah.
I've never been a big fan of Missouri. I don't think they have a home field.
I've been to a game there. They don't.
Kansas State, when they're rolling, they have an identity, and that coach that they got from North Dakota State has brought that identity with him. I'm a big fan. Give me Kansas State plus the points.
Yeah, they're a 5-point favorite. Sadly, I agree with that. I don't think Missouri is it.
And Missouri struggled this week.
They've not looked good. I was pulling for Drinkwitz and hoping that he could turn it around because he seems like a good dude, but he ain't going to do it this week. I can tell you that. They struggle with Memphis. They ain't beating Kansas State. Game number 2, the University of Tennessee Volunteers at Florida. Big rivalry game there. Tennessee is a 7-point road favorite.
Ooh. Listen, I hate betting on Tennessee, but I feel like there's no easier money. It's one of those things like if I pick Florida and Tennessee beats them by 50, I'll feel like the biggest idiot in the world. But if I pick Tennessee and that garbage quarterback from Florida decides to wake up and be decent and Florida covers, I'm going to be like, all right, well, that's just bad luck. So give me the Vols plus the points. I'm going to take 2 back-to-back road favorites to start this.
Yeah, same. Give me UT. Florida is trash, man. There's nothing good about Florida. Tennessee struggled early against Austin Peay. They figured it out. It was a gimmicky offense that Austin Peay rolled out. Tennessee's a good football team. They're better defensively. That's all I'm going to say. Give me Tennessee by way more than 7. All right, here's your shot. We've got the college game day game. We got the Colorado State Rams at Colorado. Colorado is, you're right, Vegas just opened up that spread. DraftKings has it at 23.5 points.
They're begging you to take Colorado State. So let's see where Colorado State is here. See how they've done this year. They opened up a loss at home to Washington State, and then that's the only game they played.
They played one football game.
They played one football game.
About them.
Yeah. 23.5, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Shoo. Give me the Rams.
We got to pick something different here, man.
Are you going with the Rams too? You let me pick first. So, I mean, we haven't talked about this, but
I know this is coming. I made my picks today at work.
You know what? I'll change mine. I want to root for Deion. I'll take Colorado to naysay. I'll let you be the boring hope for a low-scoring defensive matchup. And here I'm going to root for points.
Shedeur Sanders is the truth. He belongs in the Heisman conversation.
Yeah.
He is really good. Colorado can move the football up and down the field, but at some point they're going to have a struggle. And I think this is the week. 23.5 is a massive spread. This game could be 45-38, 45-35, and they still don't cover. You know what I'm saying? Like they can still score a ton of points. Yeah. And Colorado State could also. I mean, they scored 24 in their first game. They can, maybe they can score on Colorado because their defense is not.
Yeah. 31-14 does not cover.
Right. And so I don't think that they're going to lose. I don't know they're going to win by 24 points. So I'm taking the Rams.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to root for fun.
Yeah, there you go. Root for chaos. So we got Vandy at UNLV. They are a 4-point. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Vandy is a 4-point road favorite at UNLV.
No, give me the Rebels.
Ooh.
Give me the Rebels. I don't know anything about UNLV other than Barry Odom's the coach there now.
Mm-hmm.
They got beat really bad by Michigan this week because I just talked about that. It's the only reason why I know that one. I know the Vanderbilt beat Hawaii and then lost to Wake. I don't think they're very good. Mm-hmm. I don't think UNLV is any good either. So I'll take the home team.
Well, I'm taking Vandy as a 4-point road favorite. I think they're still the SEC. They're still a little bit more talented than UNLV. Give me Vanderbilt in a game that nobody will watch, nobody will care about, and nobody will know the result until we tell them next week.
Yeah, we'll tell you how that game ended next Thursday morning.
Yeah. BYU plays at Arkansas in the back half of a home where Arkansas went to Provo and won last year. Arkansas is the 7.5-point home favorite.
What time is that game?
I can tell you right. I thought I could. It's top 25.
Yeah, so
I'm looking it up. I got it right here. I think it's an evening kick if I'm
Sorry,
not.
guys.
Yeah, we're a better podcast. It's a 7:30 kick
6:30.
on 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central on ESPN2.
So I was kind of hoping this game would be at 11 o'clock, be a little time zone crazy, because if you play at 11 o'clock in Fayetteville, that's 9 o'clock in Provo. I don't know anything about BYU. Let's just see how they've done this year. They've got a win, 14-0 win over Sam Houston at home, and a 41-16 win over Southern Utah at home. So we don't know how good BYU is. I know Arkansas struggled. Arkansas -8. Give me BYU as the road dog. 8 points is a lot of points.
Maybe I'm taking Arkansas at home. KJ Jefferson had a bad game, but I think he figures it out. They got to get Rocket Sanders going at some point. I think
he did not play this week. So
and he didn't play well in week 1, so probably because of injury. But I think Arkansas is just more of a talented team. Give me Arkansas, home favorite, win by 10. Next, I picked this one just because it's a big spread. Again, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. South Carolina at Georgia. Squirrely things happen in this rivalry. This is one of those weird ones that, like, weird things. It's similar to Arkansas Ole Miss. It's just a weird rivalry.
This was like 32 or something, isn't it?
It's 27.5.
27. Give me South Carolina.
Same. I took South Carolina too.
It's just a lot of points, and
that's a lot of points.
South Carolina has shown me nothing to make me think that they're less than 27 points inferior to Georgia. But Georgia hasn't exactly shown a lot offensively either. Nope. A 24-0 game does not cover.
Right. And that's
so
what this
if South Carolina gets a touchdown, I kind of like their odds of covering.
No, they ain't going to win, but I think they cover. Agree. South Carolina, 27.5 is a big spread in the SEC. We don't see 28, 30-point victories in the SEC a lot. Unless they're playing Vanderbilt. I don't see it this week.
Right. Okay.
Ole Miss at Georgia Tech. Ole Miss is an 18.5-point road favorite.
Yeah, 18.5. So it's a new coach at Georgia Tech this year. I'll have to look up. Jeff Collins has gone. He got shown the door after last season. So I'm not high on Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech has been an ACC bottom dweller for as long as I can remember, except for 2014 when they beat Mississippi State in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah,
beat the brakes off State.
Hey. They just scored again.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I think Ole Miss beats them and covers. It's at home. Last year they beat them by, I'd have to look it up. I think they beat them by like 35-40 on the road in Atlanta last year. I think Ole Miss just handles business. The only thing that could get in the way is don't start thinking about Alabama. Yeah. Do not even entertain the idea of Alabama right now. Worry about yourself. Fix your own problems. Don't even really have to worry about Georgia Tech. Just fix your problems in-house that you have found in the first 2 games. Fix those. Fix penalties. Try to fix your offensive line protections and run blocking. And if you just take care of yourself in this game, Ole Miss will cover and give yourself a clean slate headed towards Tuscaloosa next week.
I agree. Georgia Tech showed some glimmers in the first game before losing to Louisville, but they're not good. They're not the Georgia Tech of old where they're just going to hang on to the football for 40 minutes and just wear you down and then lose, 17-10. I think Ole Miss has a real shot of blowing them out at home.
Yep.
And then our last one, LSU comes to Starkville as a 9.5-point road favorite. What's your take?
I feel like the line is fair. I feel like I know that historically LSU and Mississippi State have dogfights in Starkville. Mississippi State gets their chunk of flesh when LSU comes to Starkville more often than other teams. I know that there's a history there. However, LSU went 10-2 last year. They're the reigning SEC West champs. They do have a loss, but it's against who we both think is the best team in the country so far. I believe in Jaden Daniels. I believe in Brian Kelly. I'm going LSU just because of the pedigree there, what I've seen in the last year and a half, and looking at the questions that I had against a non-conference home game against Arizona last week. I just can't get there yet with a team that I think is as good as I believe LSU is.
I hear you. There was a Coastal Carolina football coach number
We
of
need more
years ago.
dogs.
We need more dogs.
Don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
I need more dogs. Don't need no kitty cats. Mississippi State's running the football effectively. Mississippi State is different than what we were last year. We had 2 LSU, and it was a 1 touchdown game.
Like you're trying to give me a pep talk. I'm not changing my.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to our listeners at large here.
Are you talking to the team?
I'm talking to me.
Okay.
Mississippi State fought, like you said, tooth and nail with LSU last year. They won by 2 scores because of 2 late scores in the final 6 minutes due to a turnover and some late game stuff. Not only do I think Mississippi State covers, I think there is an outside chance that we get squirrely and win this football game. I am taking Mississippi State. I believe in this team is going to upset somebody. And so I'm going to pick it till it happens. Mississippi, give me Mississippi State. Give me them dogs. Let's go. Hail State.
You want money line?
I'm taking them outright. I'm taking them outright. Absolutely.
Well, you put money line on there. You cover it's a loss.
Sounds good. Let's go.
I was about to give you so much crap if you started that whole process and you were just like, we're gonna upset somebody this year, but I'm just gonna take the points.
No, I am taking State outright.
Just give me the points. We're gonna upset somebody, but nope, not. I mean, at least you're bold enough to pick it.
I am, and I'm taking it. I think there's a real shot. I think that we can figure some things out. It just feels like one of those years that this Mississippi State LSU series, like you said, when they come to Starkville, it's always a dogfight, and there's always that chance that we get weird. And the way our defense is good, the biggest thing is we have to contain Jaden Daniels. If we can contain Jaden Daniels from running the football on us, we have a really, really good shot at winning this game.
Much like you contained that second-rate athletic quarterback from Arizona last week.
We'll see.
It's right there.
Just know, I'm letting you and our listeners know that I will be insufferable should we win this game next week.
What if you lose?
I'll be right here, and I'll take my lumps. Okay. I'll take my lumps.
I just don't say I will be insufferable if we win, but if we lose, I will make excuses.
I will be right here, sir. I'll be right here taking my lumps, wearing my Mississippi State shirt, probably my interlocking MSU, and I'll be ready to go. So that's all the college football I've got, Drew. We've run it along here, but
let's hit League of Avengers just for a second.
Yep.
I'm hoping everybody is going to enjoy this little 5-minute, 10-minute segment we do at the end of the episodes where we talk about our League of Avengers Fantasy Football League. It was a good week for both of us, Rusty. We both start week 1 at 1-0. I'll tell you who it was really bad for in my family league. My wife had a terrible week. There were 2 catastrophic ACL tears. My wife started both Aaron Rodgers and J.K.
Achilles.
Yeah, Achilles. Started both J.K. Dobbins and Aaron Rodgers this week.
No.
So really, really bad for her. But in our League of Avengers, we're going to give out a couple of awards. The first one we start off with every week. It's the Buddy Stevens Award. It is named after the legendary coach at East Mississippi Community College. At East Mississippi, everybody in JUCO, everybody's undefeated. So you had to be undefeated and win the point differential, and he just beat people 85-0. That's the spirit of football that I love. I want to take no prisoners. Just burn the ships, burn everything to the ground. And our buddy Michael Mutters, team name Kuman Torch, he went full General Sherman on the South against the defending or 2-time champion of the League of Avengers, Hunter Shaw, his Gotham City Knights. A 30-point win. Michael Mutters, congratulations. Got the Buddy Stevens Award. And my second favorite award we're going to give out today is the Al Gore Award, based on the 2000 presidential election, in which Al Gore got as many points and as many votes as possible and somehow still lost. So this team did an incredible job, but they still lost. And not only did they lose, there was almost a recount. We almost went full hanging Chad in this matchup. Our boy Zach Jones, read option Richards, lost in his game 125 to 123. And not only that, Rusty, you went to sleep. You're a terrible sports fan. You don't watch anything in real time. You only get all of your highlights via Twitter the next morning. And I have no one to share this with because you go to sleep. But our boy Zach had a 13-point lead. He was going up against our buddy Lump, and Lump only had Tyler Bass, the kicker for the Buffalo Bills. And in a 16-13 game with the clock winding down in the fourth quarter, Zach had a 3-point lead. Tyler Bass lines up for a 40-yard field goal and doinks it. But it goes through the upright. Zach scores. What was the score? Oh, my phone went to sleep. Zach loses
by 2 points.
Yeah, 125.1 to 123.2. 123 points in a loss on a doinked field goal from 40 yards was just gave me, it was funny. I was on the phone. Zach is in San Antonio on a work thing with Cub Cadet. He called me because his phone's broke. He can't look at any scores. He's carrying a laptop around with him everywhere. He's sitting at a sports bar at this resort in San Antonio, and I'm texting the group message like, guys, you saw it. Guys, this kick is going to determine Zach's game here. Everybody turn on Monday Night Football. And then it blew up when the kick doinked and went in, and he called me. He said, did I lose? And I was like, yes. And as I'm telling him, explaining to him how he lost this game, there goes Xavier Gibson returning a punt in overtime to win the game. And we're both just screaming over the phone. He's in San Antonio, Texas. I'm in Ripley, Mississippi. And we're both just screaming like we're standing beside each other. It was a legendary end to the fantasy football week. Sucks that Aaron Rodgers tore his ACL. We're not going to get into towards Achilles, which is much worse than an ACL. We're not going to get into NFL this week. We covered way too much college football, but it was just an incredible ending to the fantasy football week.
I did fall asleep, and then I woke up and saw the text and turned it on and saw the very tail end. I saw the punt return. So I did respond to your stuff at midnight Eastern time. I did wake up and see that. But, yeah, what a fantastic week one of fantasy football. Cannot wait for more. I'm so glad it's back. League of Avengers 1-0. Witten Family League 1-0. Hard to get much better than that, man. Let's go. In the Witten Family League, I had some monster games from Aaron Jones and Christian McCaffrey. I'm just excited it's here and I can care about football again, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Congratulations to Michael Mutters and to Zach Jones, even though, Zach, that's a double-edged sword. You get an award, but you lost the game. Yeah. Congratulations to our first two winners of the $2 Sports Podcast League of Avengers Drewski Awards
2023
2023 extravaganza.
Race for the cure.
Fun run race for the cure.
That's it, man. Speaking of, real quick, so in our family league, me and my brother and my cousin Jim try and find the deepest Office references for our team names.
Right.
This year, I am the Slumdunder Mifflinaires.
Yeah, Slumdunder Mifflinaires.
Yeah. Clark's I'm a little stitious, and Jim is Big Tuna. So shout out to the Witten Family League. Let's go.
Those aren't very
there's one of those that are deep.
Yeah, none of those are deep. So but yeah, good week. Good podcast.
Yeah, it's good. Uh-oh.
Hello?
Uh-oh is right. Cousin Kirk is back to drop a bomb and a good jewel on the $2 Sports Podcast. I mean, could you ask for anything better on a Wednesday night at 1946? For them people that don't know, it's 7:46, okay? So we're going by military time, just in case y'all didn't know. Buckets.
Yes, sir.
I know you got plenty of money up there in South Carolina, so I'm going to allow you to send me a I'm sorry I took your quarterback in the fantasy football league. I sent him a bottle of Buffalo Trace because it is scarce down here in North Mississippi. So whenever you want to send that here, I will text you my address, and I'll be much obliged to take it from you.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Cousin Kirk wanted Kirk Cousins in the fantasy football draft, but Bucket swooped in front of him and grabbed him right out of his clutches.
I tell you, there was very little things that made me mad that night, and that was the number one. That was the number one. As soon as he turned that card in, in my head, I just went,
Yeah.
That's I'm trying to keep it PG for the good people out here at the $2 Sports Podcast, but Lord, it made me sour.
That's how I felt when Aaron Ivey took Tua right in front of me.
Speaking of Aaron Ivey, speaking of all the people, Lord, Aaron Ivey, for the record, you are welcome for that W that you got this first week of fantasy football draft. I tell you, I was sitting there looking pretty. I think I was up 75-64, and I had Aaron Rodgers right there ready to go, and he had Garrett Wilson. And I was like, oh, this is about to be awesome because he ain't going to throw touchdown passes to just Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard's going to get one. Breece Hall might get one out of the backfield. I was looking forward to this game. And not even 4 plays into that game, Aaron Rodgers goes out with Achilles injury.
Yeah. Kirk needed Aaron Rodgers to outscore Garrett Wilson by 10 points. And Aaron Rodgers got 0. And Kirk lost by 4.
In the pillow fight of the week, because it was one of the lowest scoring games that we had.
I'm gonna give out a Drewski real quick. That is the Cy-Hawk Memorial Trophy goes to Aaron Ivey for the fantasy football game most resembling the Iowa State rivalry.
As long as you put honorable mention Triangle Face Monkey on there, we're good. I mean, I got part of that award because I helped him out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was sitting there looking at it, and I was like, Aaron Rodgers beat out Abe Lincoln by 3 plays. You know what I mean?
Well, Kirk, I'm glad that you jumped on with us. We are wrapping up this podcast. Can't think of a better way to wrap it up than for Cousin Kirk to chime in his trooper car one more time. And so, Kirk, tell them where to find you, and we're going to shut this podcast down.
Where to find me? You can find me in North Mississippi, Alcorn County. Okay. If you want to find me on Instagram, any type of social media, it's one big KG52. I'm here. Answer any questions you want. And I got them all, buddy. I got them all, except on how to win in week 1 of fantasy football, because this is the 4th year in a row where I've lost week 1.
If you really want to find Cousin Kirk, go about 90 down Highway 45 in Alcorn County. You'll find him quick. F20.
Quick.
Be on you quick.
Hey, swig a beer for the working man. Always tip your waitresses, and do not go home with strippers named Ethel.
Don't look, Ethel. All right, thanks, Cousin Kirk.
See y'all.
Rusty, I'm glad we got Kirk to hang out with us for a little bit tonight.
Yes, sir.
Tell everybody where they can find us in the week going forward.
At the number $2 Sports Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, $2 Sports Podcast on Facebook. We're on all your favorite podcast apps: Apple, Spotify, Podbean, Amazon Music, Google. And then if you want to see our ugly mugs for some ungodly reason, we are on YouTube. Give us a like, follow, share wherever you get your podcasts. Please interact with us on social media. Tell us where we got it right. Tell us where we got it wrong. Participate in this week's picks. Last week, y'all beat us. Maybe y'all will beat us again. I don't think so. I feel good about my picks, but we'll see what happens. Yep. Drew, see you back next time. Next week, same time. I enjoyed it, brother. Good show as always.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, Rusty. See you next week. Everybody have a good week.
See ya.